Hey guys, this is part 2. This is going to be a weekly series posted every Wednesday on YouTube. There's always more than what's said on Sunday mornings at church, and this is an opportunity for us to go deeper and go further into what's said, and also touch on some things that the pastor might not have been able to talk about on Sunday morning. So here's part 2. Okay, so this last Sunday, James introduced us to our new sermon series called Does My Butt Look Big?
Yeah.
I think this is going to be a pretty cool series. We're going through different people in the Bible and what their main butts were that stopped them from doing what God wanted them to do.
That's right. So, so we started off this series, and I think it's coming from a place of realizing that as Christians or people who are kind of digging into their faith or figuring out what life is starting to look like, we all recognize that there's got to be something more to life than waking up in the morning, eating some breakfast, doing some work, and dying. There's got to be more. It has to be more to life than this. And I think often we have a common understanding that there just must be more to this. But what is the more that we're called to be a part of as believers? And there's the basic stuff that we're all supposed to cover, like love God and love people. Like that's the basic kind of starting point. But we're looking at where do we go after that? And what if God's calling us to do something pretty crazy? Like what if he's calling us to get out of the boat and walk on the water, or to build a giant ship that everybody's going to go on in the event of some sort of disaster? Or maybe God's calling us to leave our normal jobs or our normal routine and pursue him in a greater fashion. We have all these buts that come up when we think about these things, but what about time? What about money? What about, and we don't know what to do after that. So how do we get over that? How do we deal with the big buts that are in our lives?
And a butt gives God the opportunity to work in amazing ways.
You got it. That's exactly it. So we talked about it on Sunday about the butt always gives away to the chance of seeing God do something greater, God do something bigger. And we all know that he's capable of doing huge and amazing things, but we get in the way of that often, right?
Yeah.
So for you, Ryker, when it comes to responding to God and things that he's laid on your heart, what are some butts that you've had in your life, or some big butts that you've had in your life?
I actually had some pretty big butts about doing this video series. One of my main ones is I'm worried what other people will think, or I can't talk in front of people. Those are some big butts I had, but I know that if I move forward trusting God in this, that he can do some pretty big things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's just it, right? We have these things that we encounter in our lives that are scary for us, or we just don't see how we can naturally overcome the adversities that we're facing, or maybe even what we see coming down the pipe in front of us. It's just it's too big, it's scary. All these deep internal mechanisms start kicking in about self-preservation, self-protection, and not that it's bad to have those pieces active in our lives, because we want to make sure that we're not doing anything too insane.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if God, who's the creator of the universe, who's formed everything, giving order to the atom, creating the platypus, allowing the zebra to drink water without its head, the giraffe to drink water without its head exploding. If God is calling us to do something different in our lives, why should we be afraid of it? Even though the adversity is there, even though the fears might be in place and they might be real things, does it change the fact that we say we're going to trust in God and move forward believing in him? So I like what you said there. There's maybe even a fear, a personal fear for you.
Yeah.
What about this series? What's it going to look like? How do we do this? What are people going to think? What's the response going to be like? Or I can't talk in front of people.
Yeah.
We're going to cover that with Moses 3 weeks in. So don't worry, you'll be able to figure that one out. What do I do when I can't talk in front of people? But the reality is that if God has called you to do something, get excited, because the butt that you might have is going to give way to watching God do something great.
Yeah.
And so it's stepping out beyond fear, beyond adversity, beyond concern, and knowing that God's got it under control. It might not make sense to you right now, but when we see his plan unfold, we're going to look back on the other side of it knowing that he's taking care of everything. Right? It's pretty huge.
Yeah.
So have you ever felt or been in a position where you feel wildly unqualified to do what you're supposed to do?
Well, right now.
Awesome. But even though you might feel unqualified right now,
Yeah.
it's amazing. Okay, so this is the cool part, right? So God equips the called. Okay,
Yeah.
God equips the called, and we can have all these excuses in the world of why we're not going to respond to what God's putting on our heart to do.
Yeah.
But God equips the called. So He might say like, "Hey, you know what, Ryker? I want you to do this," and you might say like, "But I don't have the training."
Yeah.
But I don't have the equipment. But I don't have the skill set. But.
Mm-hmm.
All you did is you responded saying, "Okay, fine, I'll do it."
Yeah.
Right? And then that's the cool part, right? It's like, "Okay, fine, I'll do it." And then all of a sudden, when you're like, "Okay, fine, I'll do it,"
Yeah.
the buts got eliminated because you got some equipment given to you to use, and we got some video gear to use, a really crazy gimbal that you're able to use for going and doing some recording and get some B-roll and stuff. Like all of a sudden all this stuff just came together to give you the tools that you need to go and do the job that God called you to do.
Yeah.
Which is pretty wild.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, like it's insane, right?
Yeah.
So like just like that, all of a sudden, to put a dollar value on it, like thousands and thousands of dollars of equipment just all of a sudden came together to give you what you need to do what God has laid on your heart. Because you really feel passionate about reaching the world around you, like even on a social media platform, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And having some interconnectivity with your generation through social media, online activity, and that kind of thing. And that's beyond my skill set, but that's something that God's laid in your heart.
Yeah.
And when you said, "Yeah, God, I'll do it," He just started opening up. And then not only that, He's giving you people resources around too.
Yeah. Like I was worried at first because I have all these ideas in my head of what I want to do and like what I could do and like but I can't do this all by myself.
Yeah.
Or like but this would be a lot easier if there's more people to help me, but I'm not available all the time. But then now I have a team with me working. So like I'm super happy. I don't have to do the live stream every Sunday. I don't have to Yeah.
It's amazing how God takes care of that. So you respond, and then He resources you to do what you need to do. Yeah. Which is fascinating, right? And I know like Maria and I have watched that unfold in our lives like so many times, over and over and over again. From leaving like a mainstream type of job and security and all those sorts of things to step into ministry. Like I'm thinking like, what business do I have to step in ministry? I wasn't a pastor. I didn't have I wasn't ordained. I didn't have any kind of like licensing or training or anything like that. I just loved God and I love people. Yeah. Like I love God and I love people. And God's like, "Okay, if you love me and you love people, this is what I want you to do." And I was terrified because I'm like, I can't afford to leave my job. I can't afford to raise a family in this world without these contingencies in place. Yeah. And God's like, "Do you trust me?" And I'm like, well, I had to wrestle with that. Yeah. I'm like, well, I say I do, but I don't know if I do. Yeah. And when I took that jump and Maria took that jump and we were like, "Okay, fine, we were at our wits' end. We're like, fine, you know what? We're just going to trust in you, God." And then right when we decided, okay, we'll trust in you, God, and we stepped away, that's the key part with this whole thing, right? Is we never get to see the fullness of what God has in store until we first take that step. Yeah. Right? And like, you see an example in the Bible there of God calling Peter to step out of that boat. And Peter never would have understood the gravity of the power of Christ until he stepped out of that boat. He stepped out of that boat, and all of a sudden the ground or the water underneath him was solidified that he was able to stand on it. I mean, that's amazing, right? And so you look at that example and you extrapolate that and apply it to your own life. And for us, it's like nothing seemed possible. Stepping into ministry seemed impossible. How on earth could we possibly do this? We don't have the money, don't have the time, don't have the resources. All those things that are very valid. What about our kids? What about our future? What about retirement? What about this and that? And then the moment we finally stepped out, the moment I called my career and resigned, is the moment we started seeing God do amazing things of caring for every single one of our needs. Now, not all of our wants were met. Right. We didn't always see our wants met, but we saw every single need met. Even to this day, it's been like 7 years now. Even to this day, we've seen every single of our needs met without exception. And it's been this journey of knowing no matter what, we can trust in God. So just for yourself, like when you say, yeah, I'm going to respond to you, God, He opens up the doors to say, now check out what I'm going to do. Mm-hmm. And it's not about you. It's not like, hey, Ryker's great. It's about God taking the foolish things of the world and you are and I am, like we are the foolish things of the world. We're not credentialed, we're not ordained, we don't have letters behind our name, we're not classically trained. You haven't gone to school for this stuff.
Nope.
And God is taking the foolish things of this world and he uses them so that he receives the glory.
Yeah.
So if anything good comes from this, if anything good comes from this sermon series, if anything good comes from my life or what Ryker is doing, it's coming from the fact that God is glorious.
Absolutely.
Not us, right?
Yeah.
He's big, and we aren't. And that's the cool thing, that the journey we get to walk on. And so, this series really is put together to hammer home the reality that God is bigger than any obstacle you might face. He's bigger than any obstacle that might come your way. Anything that might be scary for you or cause you to hold back, God is bigger than that. And if he's called you to do something, we actually have an obligation to respond in obedience. And because we're kids in God's eyes, like we're just children, right? Like what are we? Like we're still in diapers, and we've really got nothing to offer in the grand scheme of eternity. And because of that, what's amazing is that he has grace on us for all of our screw ups along the way. Because you're going to respond to God and you're going to start doing all this kind of stuff, and that's great. And you're probably going to screw up along the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, right? Exactly. Yeah. Oh, crap, I don't know how to edit this content, or shoot, I forgot to press record on the microphone. There's so many pieces, like earlier.
Yeah.
And there's so many pieces along the way that are scary and we're going to screw up on. But as long as our hearts are anchored to Jesus, as long as we're pursuing the goal that's heavenward, we got to know, and you guys got to know, that Christ is going to be gracious with you. Don't worry. As long as you're responding in obedience, he's going to be gracious with you along the way. And it's not a scary journey. It's actually an exciting journey, because we get to go and do the very things that the world says are impossible. We get to do them through the strength of Jesus. And at the end of the day, he gets the glory, and we get to say, wow, God, you're good.
Yeah. Tell us more about where we're going with this series, and what are we talking about? And
that's good. So, on Sunday we covered it a little bit in the service, but you can only kind of cover so much. But the hope of this series and why we're putting it together and why we're moving forward this way actually deals with some internal issues on my end, as well as I think it's going to deal with some larger issues that we as a church and a Christian population are wrestling with. And so for the first part of it, when dealing with my internal stuff, is what are people going to think? But then also, what if me, Pastor James, who's in charge of this church and everything, what if as we bring other people into this series and we have other people teaching and training on this series, what if that makes me somehow seem less important? And so that's one of those humanistic sort of fleshly things that creep in. But the reality is that God's called people to be ministers of the gospel. And as a leader in the church, I actually have a responsibility and obligation to see people built up and then released into ministry opportunities. And so through this whole series, we're seeing many different people engage in opportunity to be in ministry, whether it's being a part of building each sermon for the sermon series, or whether it's a part of sharing on a Sunday morning, or being a part of what you're doing here, Ryker, of giving some feedback during the week. And what's neat in this series is we're seeing a pretty significant collaboration from staff and volunteers that are being a part of building this sermon series. And that's not something we've ever done before. So typically it's, myself and Maria, that we build our own sermons and we figure it out on our own, or maybe Ben and Kristen, our youth pastors, figure it out by themselves. But in this case, we're getting our staff and our volunteer team together. We all get together once a week in the same space, and we're actively digging into the word. What is God speaking? What's your perspective? What's my perspective? And getting a broader understanding of the context of the scripture, so that we're all able to have kind of skin in the game, a bit of our flavor attached to each message that's written, regardless of who's sharing. So that's kind of the main piece, church-wise.
I really like this, how we're putting together the sermons, is because you're bringing together different people with different ideas and different points of view on everything. So this last sermon prep that we were going through, Maria had a direction where she wanted to take her sermon, and then Ben came in and said something different, and then Kristen came in, and then her direction of her sermon just completely flipped around.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome, right? So you see like this, the collaboration is so crucial, especially if you're looking at like longevity in ministry and like how on earth do I stick this thing out? And we see in our community that the church is changing pretty quickly. We're seeing people coming to faith in wild ways. We're seeing the church grow, which is really interesting. And we also realize, like pastorally, there's only so much that a couple people can handle on their own, right? And really, there's an importance about realizing that you're not that important. There's an importance about realizing that you have to bring a team together in order to go and do the bigger pieces, go and do the greater things. So we've been really thankful to the Lord how he's brought our team together, how he's developed our team, and he's brought a hodgepodge mix of folks in from different backgrounds, different life experiences that are all partaking in building this series together. So, part one is being able to watch what's happening in the congregation with, what's happening in our team, dealing with the butts in our own lives as we're packaging the sermon series together. And then the other piece that we want to deal with in this series is really realizing no matter who you are, no matter where you come from, there's personal struggles and fears that you have that are in your life that really keep you from stepping over. And we're going through Noah, Abraham, Moses, Rahab. I mean, she's a prostitute. Gideon was just like a little dude who had nothing, and he wanted to build an army that he could accomplish things with, but God dwindled it back to nothing. You got David, Jonah, Jeremiah, Esther, even like the little kid who had his lunch taken by Jesus to go and feed the 5,000, right? Like this poor little guy's like, but this is my lunch, Jesus. And Jesus like, give me that lunch. We got things to do with this, but I got nothing. Don't worry, it's going to be fine. Even John the Baptizer and Saul, who persecuted people. These are all folks that have butts in their lives, but their butts echo our butts, right? Like it's almost like they've gone through it, so we know how to accomplish and how to be victorious in Jesus. Mm-hmm. So that's the goal, is to see the church raised up to be fearless, to put their butts aside and respond to God in obedience.
Yeah. Because everyone's got big butts.
Everyone's got a big butt. That's right. Yeah. Big butts, little butts, subtle butts, pronounced butts. We all have butts in our life, right? And so how do we deal with these things? How do we overcome the big butt, right? Yeah.
All right. So what do we have to look forward to these next couple weeks? Or is there any final points you'd like to go over?
Yeah. Okay. So in the next couple weeks, we've got Pastor Ben. He's our youth pastor here, him and his wife. He's going to be hitting home next week about Noah, so that's going to be pretty exciting. And the collaboration process for that was pretty fun. So he's packaging that together this week, and we'll be sharing on Sunday about that. And then the week after, for Father's Day, Pastor Maria, that's this guy's wife here, is going to be speaking about Abraham, which is perfect for Father's Day because, Abraham was going to sacrifice his son. So Father's Day, so good. Sometimes all of us dads just want to our children, but praise the Lord. So we got those things coming up in the next couple of weeks, which would be great. So look forward to those, checking out the sermons on the website, on the YouTube, and also on the YouTube. I'm over 30, okay? Please go to the YouTube to watch the video series. Okay, so you can check out the series on YouTube, and you can check out the after show with Ryker on YouTube as well. So basically that's it coming up, Noah and Abraham. And other than that, we're just really excited to kind of unpack this, and we're hoping that as you kind of join in, if there's some questions that you have about some of the stuff we're talking about, maybe about the characters that we're going to be dealing with in the Bible. Maybe there's some questions that you've got just about faith or religion. Maybe you're not religious or have any kind of faith, and that's okay. We want to be able to dig into these things with you. This is a safe environment for you to dig into all the stuff that you normally wouldn't know how to. And maybe you've got some big butts in your life that you're trying to navigate through. And so if you've got some questions about how to navigate through some of these things, you're welcome to reach out in the comment section, ask us some advice or sort for some counsel. That's totally cool. And we'd love to tackle that kind of stuff with you and walk you through the journey that God's calling you to. So don't be afraid. Like, comment, subscribe, and we'd love to be able to get back to you and bring you into this conversation that we're having today.
All right, so that's it for the first episode of part 2. Yeah, any questions, drop them in the comments. Let's start a discussion, and I'll see you next week on part 2.
That's right. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit that bell so you can get notified of when the next one comes up, and we'd love to hear from you. Have a good one.
Peace. All right, I think that's it for the first session. Okay. That's it for the first episode of, what is this thing called anyway? Part 2.
Let's take 2. Let's take 2 on that. Try that again.